though it hang loose on his limbs. Let me lift my eyes to our mother with pride that I did not abandon you on this day. How righteous a youth rides forth now, charging against a force of 30,000, in armor that barely clings to his body, without his feet in the stirrups of his horse. Yet grown men recoil at his cry of war, at the flash of his sword taught by Abbas himself. No coward could parry his swift strike, the bravest among them could not stand against his zeal. But when the thirsty Qasim fell from his steed, he called out, "O my uncle, O Aba Abdullah!" What fear does this fallen, thirsty boy instill, that traitors fled in a storm of panic? The martyr of Karbala lay crushed beneath the hooves of the Kufan horses. Few were the bodies Sayyid al-Shuhada could not return. When Abbas was slain, his back was broken. When Akbar fell, his right hand was severed. When Asghar was slaughtered, he could not face Rubab. But when Qasim returned to his Lord, Aba Abdullah could not carry his scattered limbs. O my brother, your Lord has accepted your plea, and now I shall meet you at the banks of Al-Kawthar. Please recite a loud salawat.
Let's send one more loud salawat for Musa Hassan. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. Next, we're going to have a poem from Yusuf Jafri and his cousins Haidar and Hadi Rizvi. We'll bring them up with a loud salawat.
Salawat. Hussain al-Gharib al-Gharib al-Hussain Hussain al-Shaheed al-Shaheed al-Hussain Hussain al-Gharib al-Gharib al-Hussain Hussain al-Shaheed al-Shaheed al-Hussain. You're the grandson of the Prophet Muhammad Mustafa, the son of Imam Ali and Lady Fatima, the purest of souls with utmost purity. Yet thousands of so-called Muslims showed no loyalty. They saw you enter the holy cloak by the will of Allah, yet shroudless they left you in the plains of Karbala. Hussain al-Gharib al-Gharib al-Hussain Hussain al-Shaheed al-Shaheed al-Hussain. You're the teacher of sacrifice and of charity. You even fed the horses of your enemies. From darkness into light you set horror free. For surely you entered heaven with your mother's handkerchief. But when you pleaded for mighty Asghar, who was just a thief, and that was what they fed to your infant baby. Hussain al-Gharib al-Gharib al-Hussain Hussain al-Shaheed al-Shaheed al-Hussain. No Qasim, no Muhammad, no Abbas, no Akbar, no Asghar, you lost them all so fast. Oh Allah, please accept this humble sacrifice. These were the words of our Imam when Asr time arrived. Oh Allah, what has he lost, he who loses you? But oh Allah, what can he lose, he who finds you? Hussain al-Gharib al-Gharib al-Hussain Hussain al-Shaheed al-Shaheed al-Hussain Hussain al-Gharib. No, stop. Salawat.
Let's send a loud salawat for Yusuf, Haidar, and Hadi. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Our next poem is going to be from Maryam Shah. We'll bring up Sister Maryam with a loud salawat.
Assalamu alaikum. Today I'll read a poem about Hazrat Abbas. In Karbala, where the sands were stained with blood of martyrs that was shed in pain, there stood a hero brave and true, Hazrat Abbas, the one so few. With sword in hand and flag held high, he charged ahead without a sigh, to protect his brother, the Imam of all, and answer his call no matter the toll. He fought with courage and vanity against the army so ruthless and outnumbered. He did not yield, for his faith was strong and his will not unsealed. He faced the foes with unwearying might, defying the odd, the darkest of night. With each blow struck, he held his ground and left the army in shock and astound. Alice was his fate, was written so, to be struck down in trenches below. And yet he stood with flag in hand, for he knew his mission and its demand. He fell, but his legacy lives on as a symbol, as bravery that won't be gone. His sacrifice an eternally flame, a shining light that should forever remain. In Karbala, where the sands were stained with blood of martyrs that was shed in pain, there stand a hero with his head held high, Hazrat Abbas, the one who'll never die. Salawat.
Let's send one more loud salawat for Sister Maryam. Next, we're going to have another poem from Muhammad Zahid Hussain. We'll bring up Muhammad with a loud salawat.
Close your eyes and imagine. Imagine the dry winds of Karbala carrying the echo of Al-Atash from the parched lips of Imam Hussein's children, but they were never able to rejoice. Imagine Yazid's soldiers, drunk on power, deaf to the truth, blind to the shame, heart sealed, not thinking of virtue, only their false fame. Imagine Bibi Zainab, the strong and the bright, watching silently as her loved ones asked to fight. Imagine Hazrat Abbas, Qamar-e-Bani Hashim, helping young Qasim onto a saddle too vast for him, kissing his brow and concealing his tears, staying patient and giving prayers. Imagine her, once a commander in Yazid's army, now freer than the wind by saying sorry. Imagine Shimr Lanatullah, blade in hand, only not knowing, too full of haram to understand. Imagine Bibi Sakina, watching the standard of Abbas waver, not knowing it would never save her. Imagine Rubab whispering desperate pleas to get a drop of water to provide Ali Asghar with ease. Imagine Habib ibn Mazahir, white-haired and steadfast, running into battlefield at the Imam's call, at long last. Imagine On and Muhammad stepping forth with courage, Bibi Zainab's humble sacrifice raised from their baby's carriage. Imagine the noble women trying to stay resolute, sacrificing so much, there is no dispute. Imagine Imam Zainul Abidin, too ill to rise, hearing the crackle of burning tents, but knowing the greater plan was wise. But I wish I had stood beside them in Karbala. I wish I could have answered the call of Hal min Nasir Yansurana. I wish I had brought water to Bibi Sakina. I wish I could have stood guard by the tents. I wish I could have shielded the Imam from the raining arrows in his final prayer. I wish I could have alleviated the searing pain of the chains. I wish I was there to ride into battle with Hazrat Qasim. I wish I could say, I am here for you, O Hussain. I wish I could have been a sword for the truth, a hand for the oppressed, and a voice for the silence. But alas, I was not there in Karbala. And yet, every day is Ashura and every land is Karbala. I can be loyal by walking to Karbala from Najaf on Arba'in. I can carry the values of Imam Hussain not just in my speech, but through my actions, my decisions, every act of resilience against oppression we see today. I can illuminate hearts through truth. I can live with dignity, pray with sincerity, and give with humility. I can confront falsehood with the legacy of Hussain etched in my soul. I can learn, teach, and defend the sanctity of Ahlul Bayt. I can serve, sacrifice, and strive until the Mahdi returns. And above all, I can say, Labbaik ya Hussain. Salawat.
Ahsant. That was a beautiful way to connect what every day is Karbala, every day is Ashura, every land is Karbala actually means today. So one more loud salawat for Muhammad. Before we begin with our speech, we're going to jump over a lot of the announcements that you've heard, and I think by this point we have a good idea as to what to do with regard to decorum, shoes, cell phones, all that kind of stuff. But just a couple of points that are going to be particularly important as we come to the day of Ashura. The main point I wanted to walk through is what the program is going to be that day and where it's going to be. So it's going to be at the Royal Banquet Hall on the day of Ashura on Sunday. It will be at the Royal Banquet Hall in Springfield. So the address is 6355 Rolling Road in Springfield. It'll start at 11 a.m. We'll have Dhuhr and Asr prayers, Majlis in English and Urdu, and then the breaking of the partial fast at 3:30. So starts at 11, goes to 3:30. That program will be in Springfield, not here on Sunday. Sham Ghariban will be here at 7:30 p.m., not 7 p.m. as we've been doing with these nights. 7:30 p.m. here, and we'll go on until Maghrib time in English, and then at 9:15 we'll begin with the Urdu Sham Ghariban program. So just a heads up there. In order not to break the flow of Shaykh's speech, we ask that everybody shift up now before he comes up. Let's do it with a loud salawat. If the sister side has the same issue, please move up as well. Thank you. We have been incredibly fortunate to have Shaykh Bilal Hussain with us these past many nights. Inshallah, we'll continue to have his guidance and wisdom until Ashura, inshallah. We've been discussing many issues, a lot of them community related, including some of the fiqh regarding death. Before those points, they've been things that I think we've learned a lot from and also understood better how to prepare for something that's going to happen instead of prepare for something at the moment that it happens. Just a quick little bio regarding our Shaykh. He was born and raised in New York, and he completed his undergraduate studies at Temple University. He left a career in corporate finance and then studied 7 years in the Hawza in Najaf. He's in charge of the Beit al-Qaim Center in Delran, New Jersey, and he's also the managing director of the Zahra Trust, a non-profit humanitarian relief organization that does a lot of important work with widows and orphans and otherwise. We're very, very blessed to have him, and we'll bring him up with a loud salawat.
رحم الله من يقرأ سورة الفاتحة. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ربي اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. الحمد لله رب العالمين، ثم الصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب إله العالمين أبي القاسم محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين، واللعنة على أعدائهم أجمعين من الآن إلى قيام يوم الدين. أما بعد فقد قال الله تعالى في محكم كتابه الحكيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الله لا يغير ما بقوم حتى يغيروا ما بأنفسهم آمنا بالله صدق الله العلي العظيم صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. Your second salawat for love of Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad. And your loudest salawat for ta'ajil faraj sahib al-asr wa zaman. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa أعظم الله أجورنا وأجوركم بذكرنا المسائب آل Muhammad. May Allah increase in our reward for commemorating the difficulties of Ahlul Bayt. Briefly in our discussion on fiqh, one of the points that we pointed towards yesterday but didn't enter into the discussion around was one of the affairs associated with the end of life. There is something in the medical community and medical ethics that's known as a DNR. A DNR refers to the right that a person can elect before or in a state of difficulty through a health proxy, which means that do not resuscitate, meaning that should this person's life end, that do not try to save their life. As a general rule, we say that every life in Islam is sacred, is sanctified, and deserves to be saved. However, the answer to how we work with the DNR, or a form that says do not resuscitate, is not a singular answer. Meaning that the saving of a life, while necessary, at times the question is that what is the situation? Are we actually saving a life in a situation or not? Let me explain what I mean by that. Someone who is fairly healthy, maybe in their 30s, maybe in their 40s, who goes through, for example, a health complication that threatens their life, we should take every opportunity we have to save and preserve that life, and with the opportunity, with the intention that insha'Allah, Allah gives them shifa'ah, sahha and salama. But as we get older, the potential and the possibility for the body to recover, for health to recover, for health to be reinstated reduces. Until, for example, someone we see that the difference between a 40-year-old and an 80-year-old or a 90-year-old is that while the possibility of life, of length of life and the possibility of regaining health remains with someone who is of the younger generation, younger age, and that there's a possibility that they can reclaim their health and reclaim and come back and be able to live their life, at the age of 80 and 90, the chances of restoring health continue to reduce and reduce and reduce to where the extent is that there are certain conditions that should they initiate that late in life, there's no way for a person to overcome them. In that situation, where, for example, someone is of 80 and 90 and then restoring or persisting their life would not in any way improve or give them quality of life or give them health, there we can have the right not to elect certain medical procedures that would restore life. It's a difficult example, but I'll give you one. For example, someone at the age of 90 whose heart is failing. It's possible at the age of 90 that if someone's heart stops, that I can reinitiate the heart through the process of chest compressions. And the chest compressions will again start the heart moving, and I can, through electrical impulses, all these other things, go through the process of restarting that heart. But at the age of 90, with the way the body deteriorates naturally, if we go through that process of chest compressions, the bones of the chest are very brittle. And the pressure that's required to reinitiate that heart is likely to break the bones of that chest, break their ribs. And the consequence of their age and the consequence of the environment that they're in, it's very unlikely that their body will heal again from even the breaking of those ribs, whether we start the heart again or not. Which is why in that situation where I'm saying that I may be able to extend life, but I can't return any quality of life, there is the possibility that it can be that it is not required to elect every single procedure possible to save a life. Now there's two important points to this. One is that it refers to the fact that we don't blanketly refuse all care. We have the option to select care, and it's selecting care before it begins. Because before that care is given, I don't know if it's going to work or if it's not going to work. Mathalan, someone's heart stops. I can pick and choose a variety of different ways to restart this person's heart. Which one's going to work? I don't know. So when I don't know if the process will work or won't work, I have an option of election. Because at that point in time, we don't know if this is going to preserve life or not. So before we begin a therapy, we have the option to choose which therapies we want to take. Similarly, in any medical case, for example, na'uzubillah, a doctor diagnoses you with a disease, and he puts in front of you a variety of different medications, or surgeries, or treatments, and says you can pick any one of these, or we can elect one of these based upon your case. This is my recommendation. Before that therapy begins, I can go through a conscious conversation and say, which therapies do I want to elect? Which process do I want to go through the process of treatment? At that moment, when a variety of options are in front of me, or things are in front of me, there's no one wajib answer. There isn't one wajib. I can pick and choose which path I want to go down. The same way, for example, even if my health condition worsens, but there's a variety of options, or there are options that may work or may not work, I have the ikhtiyar, I have the freedom, I can choose which path I want to go down. The other important point that's associated with is that what do I do once a therapy has been elected? The famous example of this that comes up quite often is, for example, when someone is put on a respirator. A respirator essentially means that the body is not capable of breathing individually, or the stress on the body is so much that if we assist by assisting the body to breathe and the lungs to operate, the body may have a better chance of healing. Now, the idea of using respirators, the idea of using these machines and life support machines as they're called, received a very bad reputation during the time of COVID, because it was basically seen, you go on the machine, you'll never come off, and you'll die on the machine, and fulan, fulan, fulan. But the truth is, many times that the machines can help and assist, and a person can use a machine and come off of the machine. But if it should so happen that I elect a therapy, and you should consciously have the conversation before therapy election with a medical profession and with scholars of Islam to help to make sure that the decisions that you make, we don't violate the laws of Sharia in the unique situations that are going on. And understand something, there's no one universal situation for everybody. No, every circumstance is different. To seek counsel is a good thing. Seek counsel, ask questions. But let's say, for example, I elected to use a respiratory system for someone who's very sick. And even though they're on this respiratory system and they're receiving assistance, they don't continue to improve. Do I have the right to remove care from them? No, I can't. Once something becomes necessary to maintain life, it's not permissible to remove it. However, there are systems by which we can understand what do we do for a person in this situation, which is why, God forbid, should someone be in this situation and we find ourselves concerned, the right thing in that situation is to revert back to both those who are ahl fan, the doctors and physicians, and in our communities we have plenty of people who will advise and counsel how we can proceed with care correctly, as well as the ulama to determine in this situation what can we do for this person, what should we do for this person. Sometimes it's not so much a question of, for example, and we mentioned this yesterday as well too, it's not so much as a question of that we should stop care and the person is suffering. Remember something, there are times where we seeing somebody see them in a state of suffering, but in the eyes of Allah they are under His mercy. Their sins are being removed, their status is being raised. We don't have the patience to witness it. It doesn't mean that it's bad for the individual going through it. So which is why there is no blanket statement, and it should not be the same answer for every person in the situation of how do I deal with a DNR? Am I allowed to elect a DNR? If a 30-year-old comes to me and says, I want to put in a DNR if I ever have to go to the hospital and I wind up in this situation, I would say that's a foolish answer. It's very uneducated. That's not what Islam allows. That's not how we want to look at life. But if somebody comes and says, my father's 90 and we're having a conversation about it, what do we do, God forbid, if he winds up in the hospital again? Then we can have a very intellectual and educated conversation about understanding all the variety of paths and return back to the medical providers with an opinion for them to further augment our information and guidance on how to set up these policies correctly. They don't have to be yes or no questions. Even, for example, the idea of a DNR, do not resuscitate, you don't have to, for example, refuse all forms of assistance. No, there are forms of assistance and that's it, which is why our lack of knowledge of this area is what makes it dangerous to try and answer a question that we're not prepared for. So that's why when these questions come up, seek guidance from those who are aware of these matters, both from Islamic perspective as well as medical or scientific perspective. so that we're not making one answer or have one opinion. It's not an easy issue. It's not something to be taken lightly. And it's not something that we have to solve individually. We have resources as a community to help each other. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. In our discussion around developing a righteous community, we were talking about the idea of the identity of the individuals in the community. One of the conversations about, for example, the members of a community is the discussion around culture. What is the role of culture in a community? What is the benefit of culture in a community? Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? And is it something to pay attention to? Culture refers to a particular lifestyle of a people and an identity by which they are tied to a similar structure of how they live their life. When culture teaches us about Islam and there is an Islamic culture, it's a very good thing. That purpose of that culture is to make it easier to live the values of Islam because everybody lives the values of Islam together in a similar fashion. For example, in some cultures it happens that in the month of Ramadan there is someone who is out before the time of Fajr beating on a drum, waking everybody up. It's a culture. In Islam, in certain communities, there's a culture of a particular type of dress that they wear. That is a dress of haya, a dress of modesty, and the culture promotes the concept of modesty. This is a good attribute of culture. There is, for example, at times in culture, types of food and types of things that are familiar to be eaten, which are both halal and tasty. It's a good type of culture. There are other times that, for example, a culture may have practices of immodesty. A culture may have practices of, for example, wedding celebrations that are outside of the bounds of Islam. And we would say that these examples of culture are not the ones that we want to establish. Where culture supports us and teaches us to get closer to Islam, we like it. But where culture takes us away from Islam is where we have to say no, that we don't want to establish this attribute. Similarly, in the conversation we talked about yesterday, if you remember, right? We talked about a Muslim American versus an American Muslim. Well, it's the same thing. There's a Pakistani Muslim and a Muslim Pakistani. Or Indian, whatever you subscribe to. However the British split us up, that's your choice. What do you want to identify with? But the description is that every element of culture, if we can recognize the invasive nature of the American culture that can impact us negatively in our view of how we relate with Islam, so can be said of every culture. These negative attributes don't mean that culture itself is a bad thing. No, as I mentioned, the purpose of culture is to make it easier to live the life and values of Islam and to create a conformity amongst the society so that we can all practice Islam together. That's very good. But it doesn't supersede Islam. It doesn't take precedent over Islam. I have to ensure that the values of Islam are preserved and that those continue to benefit me. One of the places where this becomes a very poignant conversation, especially in today's society, is does culture in my identity play a role when looking for a spouse? And you'll find that as the generations are coming into American culture, the answer is different. If we can take a moment and just move forward, there's a request for more space to be made. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Salli ala Muhammad wa ali. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. When we look for a spouse or someone to marry, should we consider culture? Is there a benefit to it? Is it more harmful? Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? What you'll find is many times the parents are like, no, it has to be in this culture. And the next generation is like, it doesn't have to be in this culture. And you'll find at times that parents and children are in opposition on this issue of what should I look at when looking for a spouse. Let's humanize the debate. Why do parents want you to look at culture? They want you to look at culture because it facilitates the home life. Let me explain. There's two benefits. One, it facilitates the home life. How does it facilitate the home life? Think of your favorite comfort food. Some of you will think of biryani. Some of you will think of dal chawal. Some of you will think of, for example, timman wa qima. Some of you will think of, for example, all the various different beautiful foods that our parents raised us with. It happens that sometimes you want something that's comforting at home. A shared culture makes it easier for your spouse to understand what you want your home life to be like. What's my comfort food? You share a comfort food when you share a culture. You have an understanding of the same priorities. It also makes it easier in the process of raising your children. A shared culture means that when Muharram comes, when Ramadan comes, when special times come, that we both understand how we want to celebrate, commemorate, observe our holidays. Because our culture commemorated, celebrated those holidays the same way. The argument that's made for looking within culture first from one aspect of creating ease in the home life is to say that if your spouse and you come to an understanding faster because you've had similar experiences growing up, it makes it easier for the family to blend together and understanding to exist between the two. This is one. The other reason why culture is very much pushed is we have a hadith from our Holy Prophet Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We have a few of them, but the one that we'll mention, تُخَيِّرُ لِنُطِفِكُمْ لِأَنَّ الْإِرْقَ دَسَّاسٌ. Be careful who you choose as a spouse and where you have your children, because certainly the genetics, the family, plays a role. When we look at someone who has a cultural similarity with us, we're looking at someone whose family, whose culture we understand. And when we look at the option of marrying into this family, we don't just look at the individual. Are they handsome? Are they pretty? Are they well educated? We look at the entire family because we understand where they came from and who they were. And it facilitates and makes it easier for us to understand all of the background of the family that our Prophet is saying, be careful, pay attention to the family. There are a variety of different ahadith where the Ahlul Bayt give us this explanation. One of the places where we see this explanation, one of the actions we saw, is when Amir al-Mu'mineen goes to his brother Aqil and says, Aqil, find for me a family of bravery. Why does Amir al-Mu'mineen, Saluni, qabla an tafqiduni, ask me before you lose me. The one who could answer a question about everything is saying, show me a family of bravery because you are the knower of lineages and family and structure. The significance of that is not that Amir al-Mu'mineen needed to know. He's giving us an education that when you want to pay attention to your spouse and finding a good spouse, you can look at the aspect of the family and the history to learn about what are the attributes that the spouse is bringing to the relationship, which you may not be able to see in the individual. This is where culture, and looking at someone through their culture and looking at with family history, gives us an advantage. Now, comparatively, a child who says, I don't care about the culture, that's not a bad thing either. Let's humanize this point of the perspective in conversation. Is that our children and our generations that are growing up here in this country are part of a new culture. They're part of a culture and a society that lives in this environment, and they want to find someone who can help them navigate and understand the complications of this environment altogether. Right? We talk about comfort food. What if my kid's comfort food is lasagna, or a burger, or a steak? And he wants a spouse whose comfort food is lasagna, or a burger, or a steak. There's nothing wrong with it that if we look outside, but the value of Islam is what we want to ensure continues to persist in these processes. Culture facilitates that process. Which is why culture as a part of identity is not a bad thing, but it should not be something that becomes exclusive, that if you don't fit this culture, you don't belong here. That's where we make a mistake, where we go too far in the process of preservation of culture, where we don't allow others to coexist with us, or we see them negatively for not sharing our culture. Look at how Allah talks about the relationship between the mu'mineen in the Quran. إِنَّمَا الْمُؤْمِنُونَ إِخْوَةٌ فَأَصْلِحُوا بَيْنَ أَخَوَيْكُمْ وَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ لَعَلَّكُمْ تُرْحَمُونَ. Allah describes and He says that you, the believers, are brothers. So make peace and live harmoniously with your brothers. And have fear of Allah. When we talk about having the fear of Allah, ittaqullah is the process of recognizing and seeing that give people the benefit of the doubt on the basis of their iman. And look at iman over the fact that you look at, oh, he doesn't like biryani, what am I going to do with him? Why did you come here if you don't like biryani? This is only for biryani lovers. What? How? What? When did it become like this? The preservation of faith is our priority, not the preservation of culture. Both of these perspectives that exist, some have benefits and some are changing. The responsibility is to be educated about the process. If you want your children to marry in your culture, more than that, don't wait to talk to your child about marriage when they're 24, 25, 26. It's too late. It's too late. You have to understand something. Media uses romance to make media interesting. If you've ever noticed, we're going to take it aside. Are you guys okay? I know it's hot. Stay with me. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Ala Muhammad. We haven't yet gotten to our topic of the night, so that's why I'm going to try and move quickly. But a drama or a TV show is not a reflection of reality. If TV and movies were based on true reality, no one would watch them because life is boring. So what do? Every TV show, every movie, every program that's out there adds a little masala, adds a little salt and pepper, adds a little seasoning and flavor. And the goal is to keep you engaged in the process of watching. Now, the types of seasonings that they can have and the types of flavors they can have, the one that's a standard flavor that's the equivalent of salt is romance. And they add it now into everything. Even kids' movies have these ridiculous issues of where they're trying to utilize this to make the show more interesting. Why am I telling you this? Because if you don't talk to your children about what kind of a person they want to have as a spouse before they're exposed to this, then the TV, the movies are going to tell them what kind of a spouse they should marry. It will try to create love and emotion for the images that they see on TV and the characters they see on TV, as opposed to the values that they should be thinking about when thinking about a spouse. That's why you actually hear, especially where this is everywhere, either one, don't let your child ever look at a TV or social media or anything. But if they're going to be involved in this world and they're going to live in this society, they're going to be exposed to the idea that, oh, for example, relationships are good and exposing to relationships constantly. Help your child decide what kind of attributes they look for in a relationship before the environment influences their opinion about what their spouse, what their partner, what their life should look like. If you see your child wanting to, for example, have blonde hair, blue eyes, and marry people who are blonde hair, blue eyes, and live in a giant mansion, and on their vacations go to Hawaii, not to Karbala, well, what did society teach them? I didn't talk to them about it, and society constantly influenced them on these attributes where those are their priorities now. That's the image that they've made in their life, made in their mind about their life. If I want culture to be a priority, if I want Islam to be a priority in the way how my child builds their life, you have to talk to them. Take, for example, and you can see the difference, right? If you ask your child at the age of 10, 11, 12 and say, what kind of a spouse do you want to have? They're likely going to give you descriptions of attributes that either align with their mother, their father, the Ahlul Bayt, personalities that they revere on the basis of the good character that they possess because that's what they've seen. Put that kid through school. Let them watch TV. Ask an 18-year-old what kind of a spouse you want. And those that have been exposed to this constantly and are constantly seeing this, their answers start to change to more physical attributes, more hormonally driven attributes, more socially acceptable different attributes. And you have to remind them, well, what about Islam? And they're like, yeah, that too. But what happened? Other things took a priority in their life because of the exposure that they had, which is why culture is not bad, it's a good thing. But don't try to bring your child to culture after you've left them alone in the American culture and then now say that, no, it has to be in culture. That wasn't the time for it. 18, 19, 20 is not the time to tell your child that culture is important and you need to look in culture and that culture should be preserved. At that point in time, society has left its mark. You have to come to that conclusion and that work and that effort at a younger age and implement that process of culture if you want it to be a part of identity. Just make sure it doesn't supersede the process of faith. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. The discussion I wanted to have tonight, as we talk about the attributes and the characteristics of this community that we're building, is what is the role of politics in our community? Yeah, we're going there. The answer to this question is not straightforward. And let me explain why not. Through the seerah of Ahlul Bayt, through the biographies of Ahlul Bayt, we have seen many different examples of political campaigns and responses from the A'immah to the politics of society. I'll give you an example, and let me explain this. When you look at the attributes of Ahlul Bayt, you'll see that each one of them dealt with the politics of their time differently. For example, Amir al-Mu'mineen stays silent for a period of 25 years, where it's almost considered tacit approval of what's going on in the environment. Imam Hassan abdicates his position of Khilafat. Imam Hussain fights against the Khalifa of his time, the usurper of Khilafat. Imam Zain al-Abidin refuses to get involved in politics. Imam Sadiq abstains from the revolution going on in his environment. And then you have our 8th Imam, who becomes the successor to the Khalifa of the time. You have Imam Jawad, who marries the daughter of the Khalifa of the time. If you looked at and imagined that there should be one voice of Islam in relationship to politics, you would say these A'immah themselves have no idea, there's no consistency in what they're doing. They're all over the place. You would say that there's no message about Islam's position to politics. The same way, what you'll see is that the trends that took place during the lives of the A'immah were different. You had, for example, trends of those who were seeking power. When you talked about, for example, the entire Abbasid Khilafat, the Umayyad Khilafat, we're receiving a request again to move forward. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Salli ala Muhammad. Salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. There is space a little bit over this way as well too. I know that that's like no man's land over this way, but there's some space here within man's land. You guys can come over this way as well too. It's okay. You had, for example, the first 3 Khulafa, whose entire goal was the seeking of power, and the political trend was entirely to secure power for yourself. You had those trends in history that showed absolute chaos being established within the Muslim world. For example, the example of the Khawarij, who said that not your authority, nobody's authority, we don't believe in any of this, and refusal to follow leadership. You had, for example, the hypocritical trend. The hypocritical trend is the most dangerous one. Why? Because it promises that it wants to work for Islam, but really it's trying to destroy the fundamentals of society. For example, the ghulat, those who exaggerated the attributes of Ahlul Bayt, said, yeah, we're doing it out of love for Islam, but in reality what they were doing was trying to destroy the fundamentals. The nawasib, same concept. Those who hated the Ahlul Bayt said that we, na'uzubillah, hate the Ahlul Bayt on the basis of what Islam has taught us. But really they were hypocrites because they didn't understand Islam and they were trying to speak for the religion. So both things we saw, that the community wasn't the same throughout history, and the response of the Ahlul Bayt wasn't the same throughout history. That at times, the correct answer was that, for example, stay silent. Amir al-Mu'mineen, when he describes and he says, this ummah was very young, and if I had stood up in that time, it would have destroyed all of the efforts of Rasulullah. So I stayed silent, and I preserved that the Muslimin stayed together. In the time of our second Imam, when he goes and he abdicates this Khilafat, and the Muslimin, the Mu'mineen, come to him and say, Assalamu alayka ya mudhill al-Mu'mineen, O one who disgraced the Mu'mineen in Islam. Imam Hassan would reply and say, he says, I am not the disgrace of Muslimin, I'm the one who saved you. I found in you a weakness that if I had taken you to the battlefield, all of those who love the message of Allah truly would have been wiped out for this earth. So what I enacted was like the ark of Nuh, that I preserved you in the face of this flood that would have destroyed you, and made sure that the message of Islam persisted. You'll see other examples that where, for example, we see Imam Hussain insisting on standing up, is that the condition was such that if he didn't stand up, the message of Islam would have been corrupted. When we say, and we have yaqeen, that Imam Hussain saved the religion of Islam, one of the things that he accomplishes is the separation from religious authority and political authority by the event of Karbala. Think about it. Prior to the event of Karbala, the Khalifa could pass a ruling about what Islam wants. And the Khalifa was considered a religious authority as well as a political authority. But after the events of Karbala, though the Khilafat persisted and stayed with the Banu Umayyah and then went to the Abbasid, but no Khalifa after that claims to be a religious authority as well as a political authority. Rather, what do? They implement a system of having religious authorities in the court that says, tell me what does Islam say, because I am not qualified to speak about Islam. This was one of the processes by which we saw that the Imam's revolution was successful, and it was a necessary stand that had to take place in that moment. What some people do as a false accusation is they make the statement that, for example, the action of Imam Hussain was, na'uzubillah, because he was hot-blooded, and Imam Hassan made peace because he was a pacifist. This is not true. You and I today, if we're faced with a difficulty, we can put aside our personality and solve the difficulty on its face. What makes you think that an Imam is so overcome by his personality that his personality decides how the Imam solves the problem? Rather, no. When we make the statement that all of these A'immah represented the seerah of the Holy Prophet exactly as the Prophet would have in every situation, you have to understand the actions of every Imam. Why do we see a difference that every Imam had in these processes? It has nothing to do with their personality. It has more to do with the fact that what was the need of the time to preserve the message of Islam, and that's exactly what the Imam did. Which is why there's an argument that presents and says that if Imam Hussain had lived in the time of Imam Sadiq, and if Imam Sadiq had lived in the time of Imam Hussain, there would have been no difference in their actions. They would have done exactly what each other did. That Imam Sadiq would have been the one who proceeded to Shahada, and Imam Hussain would have been the one who proceeded to the teaching of the Ummah. Why? Because their action has nothing to do with their personality. It has to do with what's the need of Islam. And this isn't something we established. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam would say, Hassan wal Hussain imaman hadhihi al-ummah law qama aw qa'ada, that these two sons of mine are the leaders of this ummah, whether they stand or they sit. Rasulullah making this statement is giving the explanation, saying standing and sitting is not literally standing and sitting. Standing is to stand up and fight, and to sit is to sit and make peace. The statement of Rasulullah was to say that these leaders will do what's right for the ummah in every situation, whether that means that they have to fight or whether that means that they have to make peace. The conclusion of the effort of the Imam is to make sure that Islam persists. Islam doesn't die. They would put aside their personalities and their issues and look at, and that's exactly what we do. We put aside our issues and we look at what's the need of the situation, we solve the problem. In Khutbah al-Shaykh, Amir al-Mu'mineen points to this. He says, وَوَاللَّهِ لَأُسَلِّمَنَّ مَا سَلِمَتْ أَمُورَ الْمُسْلِمِينَ وَلَمْ يَكُنْ فِيهَا جَوْرٌ إِلَّا عَلَيَّ خَاصَةً. Amir al-Mu'mineen would say, he says, I swear to God, as long as the affairs of the Muslimin remain intact and there is no oppression perpetrated except against me, I will keep quiet. Meaning the goal of the Imam was what? Not to preserve his authority or his position. No, that Islam should persist. Every Imam behaved this way. What's the significance of this? The significance of this entire discussion is to point to the reality that as environments change and as the environment of politics and society changes, there are different answers to be given in each of these situations. The multiplicity of examples that we possess from the A'immah alayhimus salam of how they interacted or abstained from politics is to teach us to look at the situation that you are in and then apply the appropriate solution the Imam has taught you. At times, the answer is that we can't sit back. We have to stand up. And at times we have to be patient. And at times it's to engage. And at times it's to abstain. And the model of all of the A'immah alayhimus salam is to teach us that you will have to come up with different solutions and look to us for the solutions. If we didn't behave one way in a uniform fashion in society, then understand something: in your time, in your environment, there will be different solutions, different problems, and different conclusions that will happen. Now, understand something. When we talk about, for example, and we're discussing, right, building a virtuous community. How big is this community? Are we talking about Imam Al-Asr? Are we talking about the DMV area? Are we talking about the East Coast? America? North America? The Western Hemisphere? What's the scale that we're talking about? Once you answer that question, I'll tell you which of these solutions we should apply for the scale of that community and the issues it's facing. Meaning that when we talk about political engagement, there's no universal answer. The Ahlul Bayt did not give us one universal answer. We're not going to have a universal answer. Each answer, each solution to how do we engage and what do we do with society will be based upon the size of the community, the extent of the community, the uniqueness of the problems going on, to come up with the solutions that we have. And at times, when it comes to engagement into this society and larger culture, engagement into the politics of the environment we're discussing, there will be two of us sitting together, but our wadhifa will be different. That our actions will be different based upon our ability to engage. For example, we see the movement of Zayd ibn Ali. Zayd ibn Ali, the son of the fourth Imam. He stands up to fight. But Imam Al-Baqir, Imam Sadiq, they don't stand up. But did they condemn? Say, Zayd, no. No. The interaction and responsibility that each one had was different. Which is why even when we talk about our political engagement as a community, let's just take a look at Imam Al-Asr, let's take a look at us sitting in this room. It doesn't mean that our engagement with society and politics has to be uniform and identical. No, some of us will have a different capacity and ability, and others will have a different capacity and ability, and we will enact our ability based upon the resources that we have, and how do we build this together to make sure that the values of Islam are fulfilled. So how do you know which action you're supposed to take? How do you know, am I supposed to enact, am I not supposed to enact? For this, I have to see how I answer some fundamental questions to make sure that I don't make a mistake in this process. We're going to mention 5 points. Are you guys ready? Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. How do I know which solution I should apply? What's my wadhifa? What's my responsibility? First and foremost that we make sure is that whatever action I intend to take, can I ensure my commitment to the path of Allah and the Ahlul Bayt first? And if to enact in these politics in this environment, I have to void my opinion or my following or my identity associated with Ahlul Bayt, I don't take that action. Some of us, for example, have the ability at times to enact with the politics and society and the environment and save and preserve our identity and our faith. And others may not have the skill set to accomplish that. The first thing is that to engage in politics and society, if I have to give up my iman, don't engage. It means that my responsibility here is not to engage. My first responsibility is to preserve my faith. If I should find that I can preserve my faith, I will still continue to be a Muslim, I will continue to be a mu'min, I will not sacrifice my relationship with Ahlul Bayt, and I understand how to do that correctly, then I can proceed on forward and look at the opportunity, can I engage in this political environment? The second is that if I engage in the politics and the government and the society of the time, can I continue to forbid the evil and stay enemies with the enemies of Ahlul Bayt? Now this one's a good one. This one's an interesting one. You see, sometimes we take a look at someone, we look at them in black and white. And this is the mistake that we make. You're either with me or you're against me. There's no third option. But in reality, no one is so simple that they're either all good or they're all bad. Contemporarily, there's a debate, right? And the debate goes on and says, Europeans conquered the world. Was that good for us? Was that bad for us? There'll be those people who point to all of the evil that the European conquering of the world did, the subjugation of people, the establishment of empires, the concepts of slavery that were perpetuated. all of the bad things, the usurping of rights and materials from one land to another, all this that they did that was horrible. And then someone comes up and says, yeah, but the consequence was that they made industrial progress. They brought vaccination medications to around the world. They brought education around the world. They brought nizam to parts of society that didn't exist. They spread reading and writing. Did you know, look at history, Islam was way ahead of Europe. The Muslim Empire was way ahead of Europe. How did it happen that go look at the Middle Ages, we were teaching about medicine, and now we listen in medicine? Muslims don't have ownership of medicine, but historically we had it. Do you know what changed? It was the Gutenberg printing press. When the Gutenberg printing press was established and developed in Germany, and it started to come out, the Khulafa said this is haram, because they wanted to be able to maintain their authority over the people, so they didn't allow the printing and publishing of books to enter into the Muslim empire for a period of 500 years. For 500 years, they stopped the progress of information, the passage of information into our society, whereas the Europeans went out and started to give books away, almost literally, because it became cheap and easy to spread information. And this is why the ownership of science, math, technology went to Europe as opposed to staying in Islam where it had been established, was because of this oppression and abuse. So is what they did bad, or is what they did good? There's no black and white answer to this. There are some attributes, and which is why a human being is not entirely evil and not entirely good. So instead of, when I look at the question that can I forbid the evil, can I be an enemy of the enemies of Ahlul Bayt? It's not that, for example, I need to look at each person and say that not you, not you, not you. Rather, it's more often the position the individual takes, that those positions that a person espouses that promote and support the religion of Islam, I support and I work with them on those. And those positions that go against the fundamentals of Islam, the position is what I go against, and the position is what I have an opinion about, and I say that this is what I disagree with. Similarly today, in society, you will have people who have built their identity on something that Allah has declared haram. Allah has forbidden an action, and the person says, I only want to be known by this attribute. Can you hate that person? No. Our position with those people is hate the sin, not the sinner. Meaning I can't throw away a person even if their identity is based on haram. I say, no, that sin is haram. I will engage with you as long as you don't try to force me to promote that attribute. I will treat you as a human being. Your life is sanctified in Islam. Just because you sin doesn't mean I have a right to wish you dead. No, I wish for you hidayah that I wish for every human being. I wish that you find the path of Allah and build a relationship with Allah. The same is true when it comes to politics. No one at this point in time in the society represents the values of Ahlul Bayt and teaching of Ahlul Bayt an ma entirely. I apologize. Can we move forward one more time? Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. I'll move faster as well too. I appreciate your patience. We'll move through the topic quickly at this point in time. The significance of this is that when we say forbid evil, this forbidding of evil doesn't mean that there's no one I'll engage with, because everybody may have something wrong with him. Rather, if I have the ability to preserve my faith and stand by my faith, and I can identify a good attribute and promote a good attribute, then I can engage with that attribute. But on the other side, I have to continue to say that these other things I disagree with. There's no, for example, blanket approval. There's no one out there that we say, everything you say is great. No, it's not possible. The third of these is that we ensure that if we are to engage in the political environment, we prioritize the interest of Islam even if it's not in my best interest. I make sure that Islam continues and that Islam does not get harmed. This was in the seerah of Amir al-Mu'mineen. This was in the seerah of Imam Hassan. This was in the seerah of all of the Ahlul Bayt, whether they abstained or they stood against the government of the time. It wasn't their personal interest, it was to make sure that Islam continued on and that Islam persisted and that the values of Islam remained, even if it meant that people didn't understand or didn't appreciate the position of Ahlul Bayt. Which brings us to our fourth point. Keeping the Muslims in society together and to work together. Sometimes we think that no, our position only has to be representative of the values of Ahlul Bayt. But the values of Ahlul Bayt were to keep the Ummah together and to bring everybody together as much as we could. We see, for example, the statement of our sixth Imam Ja'far ibn Muhammad as-Sadiq alayhi salam. Inna la budda lakum min al-nas. Inna ahadan la yastaghni an al-nasi hayatuhu. وَالنَّاسُ لَا بُدَّ لِبَعْضِهِمْ مِنْ بَعْضٍ. The Imam makes a statement, he says, certainly you can't escape dealing with people. No one can dispense with others throughout their lifetime since people are in indispensable need of each other. It's always about unifying, bringing the community together, bringing people together and working together. It's not about polarizing. It's about humanizing and keeping together. The fifth of these is that if I am to enter into this arena of engaging in the politics and the environment of the society, I always have to keep my oaths and pledges to people and serve every member of society. It's not enough that, for example, I make promises to get what I want, as is the political way, and then I forget, sorry, did I say that? No, if I make an oath and a commitment, I fulfill it. And while it's true that some individuals have a greater right on me than others, the protection of society as a whole is one of the responsibilities that we possess. One of the examples of this comes from the dawr of Khilafat of Amir al-Mu'mineen. When he enters into a city and he sees a blind man sitting on the side of the street begging, Imam Ali turns to his governor or his representatives in the city and says, well, who is this? Why is this man sitting on the street begging? And they say, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, this is a Christian. He used to be a day laborer when he was younger, but now that he's gotten old, he's lost his eyesight. So he can't work anymore, so he begs. But he's a Christian, he's not even a Muslim. Amir al-Mu'mineen replies and he says, he was good enough that you took from him in his health, and now that he's in difficulty, you're going to throw him away? Amir al-Mu'mineen insisted that this person too should receive a salary from Baytul Mal, that he should be entitled to receive haqq as well too, that he should be treated as a human being and that decency should be kept for him. These elements teach us, and this is really important to understand, that when we look at all of these variables, both about the political environment that we're facing, as well as the attributes we need to possess to engage with it, we'll find individuals within our communities who have the capacity to fulfill these rights and responsibilities and engage, and others of us who can't. It doesn't have to be a uniform response even from within the community. Rather, that within the community we should have people who can step up to these difficulties and responsibilities, who have the ability to preserve their faith and engage. And others that know it still takes time. They may not have the ma'rifah or the development to be able to take care of that responsibility. So it's not about a singular response. No, the situation will demand different people to step forward. The situation will demand that different elements are capable of handling the problem, and that we should empower those people to take on that responsibility. And that around the world we will find different communities that respond to the same problem differently because their access to resources are different. There is no one uniform process by which we look at the world and we say there's only one solution to make sure that society fulfills the rights and responsibilities of Islam. Everyone is at a different phase in their development. Every society is at a different phase in their development. So the solution that we can implement is going to be different. The universal solution is the authority of Allah on this earth. Sahibul Asr wa Zaman Ajjalallahu Ta'ala Farujah. That one who can create the equity and the balance and establish the principles of Allah on this earth for everyone is the son of Zahra. Our goal is that in whatever place that we stand, that first and foremost I make sure that I am prepared to support the Imam when he comes, and that to the extent that I can, I prepare the environment to accept the authority of the Imam. How do I prepare the environment to accept the authority of the Imam? That's going to be when I embody the values the Imam will teach to humanity. I embody justice for every human being. I embody equity. I promote goodness. I forbid evil. The society will be hungry. One of the descriptions that we have is that humanity, when they see the message of Sahib al-Amr, they will universally come towards that because they will say, we're hungry for justice. We're hungry for good treatment. We failed in every system we had to find good treatment and fairness, and there's no political system that we haven't tried except that it didn't give good treatment to the people who lived in it. How are they going to be aware of this? It's going to be by our effort. It's going to be our interest in showing the world, don't look at your self-interest, look at what's fair for everybody. Don't look at what's good for you, look at what's good for humanity. Hold people accountable to justice. Hold people accountable to fair treatment. This absence of fair treatment and equity is the reason why Abu Abdullah offered the greatest of sacrifices in Karbala. When you look and you see that why did it have to be that Abu Abdullah offers the sacrifice of a 6-month-old child in the field of Karbala, it will be to prove the argument that the enemy wasn't just interested in power, the enemy was an oppressor interested in oppression. Amongst all of the shuhada of Karbala, this shaheed is unique for a variety of reasons. They describe at the time when Abu Abdullah was alone in the field of Karbala, after every sacrifice had been presented, and he stood alone with an army in front of him, and he called out, "Ala hal min nasirin yansuruna?" Is there no one here who will assist us? Is there no one here who will protect the haram of Rasulullah? This was after the shahadat of Abu al-Fadil, after Akbar, after all of the braves of the Ahlul Bayt and their companions had left. They said a cry arose from inside of the tents that the women began to weep. Abu Abdullah turned back to the tents and calls out, "Your brother Hussain is still alive. Why do you cry when I am here? I am here to protect you." There's one narration that says that the women complained and said, "Oh Abu Abdullah, when you called out in this pain and difficulty, this 6-month-old child that has been thirsty and hungry for 3 days turned over in his cradle." Understand something. An infant who has not drank milk for 3 days is not going to live anymore. They don't have the strength in their body to move. It's not like you and I that 3 days of hunger, while painful for us, is something we can recover from. An infant who goes days without drinking milk is not going to live, has not the energy to move. They said, we saw him then convulse in his cradle. We thought that maybe he had died in this moment. So we cried out. Abu Abdullah takes this infant in his lap and he says, I will see that maybe they will give him some water. That maybe this child who is on the verge of death, that maybe there is some mercy in the hearts of these people for an infant. They describe and say that Abu Abdullah entered again into the field of Karbala with something covered under his abba as he walked out under the heat of the sun. Notice at how much he loved this infant, that the heat of the sun was something that he wanted to protect Asghar from. The enemy, Umar Sa'ad, seeing Abu Abdullah coming with something covered under his arm, imagine that Abu Abdullah has come again to debate with the Quran. Imam Hussain comes and he says, you may have decided that I am your enemy, but what sin has this child committed? One description goes so far as to say that how would the Imam explain the innocence of Asghar? They say, we imagine the Imam would elaborate and say, this child, whether you give him water or not, is going to die anyway. Don't let him die thirsty. Yani, a child who has been hungry for 3 days can't live. But what sin does the child have that he should die in such a state? Say, Abu Abdullah presented the child. The battle of this Asghar is one of the greatest battles, and why I said he's different than anyone. While one soldier could go out and face off against the peace of the army, this Asghar went and turned the army upside down. Why? Because now it was a question of humanity that was presented to the army of Umar Sa'd. You could be upset that a young man with a sword has come against you. You could say that he deserves because he came and he attacked me first. But the army began to debate that this child has not raised a weapon against us. There were those who said, is there no humanity? Give him water. And there were those others who said, a child of Hussain shall not taste a drop of water. And the debate began. Have you no decency that even an infant should die in this situation? And the other would reply, have you no shame that the Amir has commanded us and you refuse his command? As they debated, Abu Abdullah raised the stakes and he says, if you are worried, I will take the water. I will put this child on the ground and you take him and give him water. Did you imagine the patience in the heart of Hussain ibn Ali? A moment ago the sun was too hot for this child. Now he has placed him on the burning sands of Karbala to complete the argument against this army. I would imagine Abu Abdullah would speak to this infant, oh my child, be patient a moment. I know that the ground burns you from underneath, the sun burns you from above, but I swear my mother Zahra is witness to every action. My father Ali is the one who will quench your thirst. Oh Asghar, complete your authority on these people. The army continued to debate in such a way that when Abu Abdullah raises this child again and they see the truth of the thirst on this child, where some describe and say that a dry tongue came out and wiped across the lips, the army began to debate again. The army of Umar Sa'd was about to break, where he calls out in his Ya Harmala aqta' niza' al-qawm. And the debate of this nation that is about to break, our army is about to enter into a civil war. Harmala describes and he says, I was an archer of great renown, and there are at least 3 arrows that he's reported to have shot on the day of Ashura. One of them he describes and he says, I took the responsibility to end the debate of this nation. I raised an arrow but found it difficult to find an arrow that would fit such a small target. I looked and I saw a silver piece of the neck of this child, and I could not find an arrow that would work correctly. Eventually I found the largest arrow that I had, and I imagined that whatever I hit would end the debate. In this way, the poets describe what was his condition, that some say he would raise the arrow and it would drop. He would try again and he could not, until eventually they said, oh Harmala, you're a master of archers, what stops you? One poet would describe and say what stopped him was that little girl of Hussain who would look from the tents to see, and he became embarrassed to shoot a child in this way. Another poet would write and say that I imagine his delay in fulfilling this command, that he would see Rasulullah stand by this child. Harmala, do you intend to kill my child? They say eventually he shot the arrow. It pierced the neck of the child from one side to the other. A child who is thirsty for 3 days does not move. But they describe when this arrow pierces the entirety of the neck of Asghar, he began to convulse in the arms of his father. They describe and say, either you could imagine what was the movement of this innocent child in his father's arms as a fish that comes out of water, or as a bird that has been entrapped. Oh, the heart of Hussain. How did you have patience? Oh, I got to be patient for a moment. How did you calm the convulsing of that child in your arms? How great is your sacrifice, oh Hussain? They say, Ya Rabbi Abdullah, calm this child. The child passed on. The blood was thrown to the heavens to bear witness on the day of judgment of the innocence of Asghar. They describe and say that one of the amal we do on the day of Ashura is that we step forward 7 times and back 7 times. And we say that as Hussain ibn Ali held this infant in his arms, he moved forward 7 times and back 7 times. We would say Hussain ibn Ali said, every mother of a shaheed has had the honor to see her shaheed. I shall give Rabab the same honor to bid farewell to her child. But then he would stop. If the other innocent children see what they do to thirsty children, they may die in the fear. Abu Abdullah would proceed. He would return. He would proceed until eventually he came close to him. He said, Rabab, come out and bid farewell. Rabab sees her child. أَمِثْلُكَ يَنْهُرِ أَسْغَارِ. Rabab would ask the question, someone as small of you, they do as nahar as well too, that when they want to kill, they end this life. This Asghar is different to every shaheed. Abu Abdullah on the day of Ashura made only one grave. It was the grave of this infant Asghar. They describe and say that Rabab took the child. Abu Abdullah went behind the tents. He looked for a place in the sand. He opened a grave. They describe and say the oppression that happened to Ahlul Bayt is 2 times so extreme that objects would weep over them. One is the earrings of Zahra that would weep at how she was struck. The other is the sword of Hussain that would weep that I was made to defend Islam, not bury the children of Rasulullah. A poet describes, I would imagine Abu Abdullah opened this grave, put in the child, filled in the sand from the feet, from the knees, from the chest, and stopped. I would imagine Hussain ibn Ali would cry and complain, Oh Asghar, your skin is so soft. The sand of Karbala is so hot. How shall I put the burning sands on your innocent cheeks, O Asghar? Abu Abdullah, if you knew what would happen to these cheeks after you. They describe the day of Ashura, when the heads were collected. Mal'un called out, there is one more sacrifice that was presented, one more martyr that was slain in this land. They said, we saw Hussain bury him in the sand behind the tents. They said, we shall not receive a complete reward until we present everyone who was on Hussein's side. So they went looking for the grave of this Asghar. How do you find a grave in a sand of Karbala? They took spears to the sand looking for the child of Hussain. Oh, Abu Abdullah, you buried him to save him. They raised him on a spear above their heads as they cheered. ألا لعنة الله على القوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون رضا بقضائه وتسليما لأمره ماتم حسين.
Brothers and sisters, please keep your seats for just a few minutes. Just a few minutes. With your voices and with your hearts, let us take our hearts and meet the heart of Imam al-Mahdi, peace be upon him, Sahib al-Asr wa Zaman, with the salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad wa ajil farajahum. Maulana, you took us to the land of Karbala in our imaginations, in our minds. Brothers and sisters, Imam Mahdi sees the land of Karbala now, with eyes that are seeing Karbala as though it was happening right in front of him. Maulana, you told us yesterday about Rabab's sacrifice, how sad she was that she didn't have a son to sacrifice. When Imam Hussain walked up to her and said, why are you so upset? She says, I don't have a son to sacrifice. All these women are preparing their young children, their soldiers, their boys. And Imam Hussain informs her that, Rabab, you will have a sacrifice to give tomorrow. Imam Mahdi is looking into the interaction between Imam Hussain and Rabab right now. He sees into the heart of Rabab, the pain that she feels. For 3 days she couldn't comfort her child. And he sees into the Imam and the heart of the Imam, who knows what's about to happen before him. When the Mal'un is going to raise his arrow with 3 prongs, and holds as a target his infant child. Brothers and sisters, with voices to soothe the heart of Imam al-Mahdi, let's call upon Ali al-Asghar. Ya Ali Asghar, Ya Ali Asghar, Ya Ali Asghar, Ya Ali Asghar, Ya Ali Asghar. Who can know the pain of father's grief and strife? Now bid farewell, Hussain, to young Asghar's life. Ya Ali Asghar, Ya Ali Asghar, Ya Ali Asghar. Hussain took Ali up to the enemy's line. I ask you just for water for this child of mine. Can't you see he's thirsty? Have you no shame or mercy? They didn't spare a cup, even though his time was up. They replied with an arrow as I spoke to them in tears. When Ali's crying ceased, I realized my gravest fears. Ya Ali Asghar, Ya Ali Asghar, Ya Ali Asghar. Oh, my dear Asghar, how they did you wrong. Your small, delicate neck, those 3 treacherous prongs. Arrow to your throat, before my very eyes. Accept this, O Allah, our youngest sacrifice. Accept this, O Allah, our youngest sacrifice. His eyes finally shut, my flowers withered away. Ali no longer thirsts, what's more is left to say? Who can know my pain, a father's grief and strife? Now bid farewell, Hussain, to young Asghar's life. Ya Ali Asghar, Ya Ali Asghar, Ya Ali Asghar. You have to let your voices come out tonight to soothe the heart of Imam al-Zaman. Ya Ali Asghar, your hunger and your thirst in the enemy's evil game, forever you'll be known by this noble name. Bab al-Hawa'ij, answer to our prayers. Your innocence, Ali, eases our despair. Bab al-Hawa'ij, grant us our requests. Bring us to Karbala to heal our aching chests. Bab al-Hawa'ij, grant us our requests. Bring us to Karbala to heal these aching chests. Call him by this name, Bab al-Hawa'ij, Bab al-Hawa'ij, Bab al-Hawa'ij, Bab al-Hawa'ij, Bab al-Hawa'ij. Ya Hussain, 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 Ya Hussain. A sweet baby in the battlefield, not in a mother's dream, oh my Asghar. A sweet baby in the battlefield, not in a mother's dream, oh my Asghar. Everyone. A sweet baby in the battlefield, not in a mother's dream, oh my.
a sweet baby in the battlefield, not in a mother's dream. Oh my Asghar, a sweet baby in the battlefield, not in a mother's dream. Oh my Asghar, the call of all men was all too clear. I was terrified, you had no fear. I was terrified, you had no fear. Such a brave heart and someone so small. Where was the courage from? Oh my Asghar, a sweet baby in the battlefield, in a mother's dream. Oh my Asghar, a sweet baby in the battlefield, not in a mother's dream. Oh my Asghar, everyone. A sweet baby in the battlefield, not in a mother's dream. Oh my Asghar, a sweet baby in the battlefield, not in a mother's dream. Oh my Asghar. Your father came back, his shoulders sheared, walking to and fro, blood in his beard. Walking to and fro, blood in his beard. What did happen there? Can someone tell me? Why didn't you come back? Oh my Asghar, a sweet baby in the battlefield, not in a mother's dream. Oh my Asghar, a sweet baby in the battlefield, not in a mother's dream. Oh my Asghar. Shahe Ghariba, oh so much cruelty, so many enemies, he had no safety. So many enemies, he had no safety. The tents were ransacked, then set on fire. Your cradle was burnt, oh my Asghar, a sweet baby in the battlefield, not in a mother's dream. Oh my Asghar, a sweet baby in the battlefield, not in a mother's dream. Oh my Asghar, I was not able to feed you for many days. I had no food or water for many days. I had no food or water for many days. But only after Shahe Ghariba did I have milk. Oh my Asghar, a sweet baby in the battlefield, not in a mother's dream. Oh my Asghar, a sweet baby in a battlefield, not in a mother's dream. Oh my Shahe Ghariba, in the dead of night, we got some water to Ruqayya's plight. We got some water to Ruqayya's plight. With that water, she went wandering, looking for you. Oh my Asghar, a sweet baby in the battlefield, not in a mother's dream. Oh my Asghar, a sweet baby in a battlefield, not in a mother's dream. Oh my Asghar, I had a dream that you would grow up to truthful and pious like all around you. Truthful and pious like all around you. I had paired you next to your father, just like Akbar. Oh my Asghar, a sweet baby in the battlefield, not in a mother's dream. Oh my Asghar, a sweet baby in a battlefield, not in a mother's dream. Oh my Asghar, Ya Hussain, Ya Hussain, Ya Hussain,
Ya Hussain, Ya Hussain, Ya Hussain, وحسينا 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 The heroes of Karbala, brave and so bold, and among them Ali, your 6-month-old. The heroes of Karbala, brave and so bold, and among them Ali, your 6-month-old. Hussain, you stood strong against torment and thirst, but did you know your son Asghar would be killed first? Did you know your son Asghar would be killed first? Oh Hussain, they know no shame, protect your Asghar. Evil coursing through their veins, they murdered Akbar. Wa Hussaina, 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 Wa Hussaina. Hussain, whose face did adorn heaven and earth, now in grief he paces back and forth. Hussain, whose face did adorn heaven and earth, now in grief he paces back and forth, cradling the infant son that he could not save, unprepared yet to dig such a small grave. Cradling the infant son that he could not save, unprepared yet to dig such a small grave. My Ali taken from me all too soon. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Wa Hussaina, 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 Wa Hussaina. In the tents, drowned in tears, sits his mother. Rubab's children ask about their youngest brother. In the tents, drowned in tears, sits his mother. Rubab's children ask about their youngest brother. Oh Ali, you had cried through my lullaby, and now my son, you have gone without a goodbye. And now my son, you have gone without a goodbye. After Asghar, I swear my heart cannot heal. After Asghar, I swear my heart cannot heal. I shall never quench whatever thirst that I feel. Wa Hussaina, Wa Hussaina, Wa Hussaina, Wa Hussaina, Wa Hussaina, Wa Hussaina. The heroes of Karbala, brave and so bold, and among them Ali, your 6-month-old. Ali Asghar, the joy of Banu Hashim. Ali Asghar, the joy of Banu Hashim. Go now in the path of Abbas and Qasim. Go now in the path of Abbas and Qasim. How can every Muslim not wail in pain? How can every Muslim not wail in pain? In the grief of Asghar and of Hussain, in the grief of Asghar and of Hussain. Wa Hussaina, 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 Wa Hussaina. Hussain, 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 Hussain. Hussain, 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 Hussain. Hussain, 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 Hussain. Waliullah Hussain, Hussain. Hussain, 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 Hussain. Waliullah Hussain, Hussain. Sibtur Rasul Hussain, Hussain. Son of Rasul Hussain, Hussain. Hussain, son of Rasul Hussain. يا ابن علي وفاطمة، يا ابن علي وفاطمة. Son of Ali and Fatima, slain on the land of Karbala, slain at the hands of Ashqiya. Hussain, 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 Hussain. Hussain Asir al-Kurubat, Hussain Asir al-Kuburat. يا ابن ياسين والذاريات. حسين قتيل العبرات. O Allah, Lord of Hussain, O Allah, Lord of Hussain, heal the aching heart of Hussain, heal the wounds of Karbala, return to us the son of Hussain, Ya Rabb al-Hussain, Ya Rabb al-Hussain, اشفي صدر الحسين بظهور الحجة يا رب الحسين بحق الحسين اشفي صدر الحسين بظهور الحجة بظهور الحجة نسألك اللهم وندعوك باسمك العظيم الأعظم الأعظم الأعز الأجل الأكرم. Brothers and sisters, we called upon Allah for the sake of Lady Fatima and her father, for the sake of Lady Fatima and her husband, for the sake of Lady Fatima and her son Hassan and her son Hussain. Allah بحق زهراء وأبيها وبعلها وبنيها وبسره المستودع فيها. We call on to Allah 10 times. Ya Allah, 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 Ya Rahman, Ya Rahim, Ya Muqallib al-Qulub, Thabbit qalbihi ala dinik. Oh Allah, hasten the reappearance of our Mawla and Savior Imam Al-Mahdi. Your Ameens have to go to heaven tonight. Your Ilahi Ameen has to raise up to the heavens tonight. Oh Allah, Ajjil li waliyika al-faraj. Allahumma ajjil li waliyika al-faraj. Allahumma ajjil li waliyika al-faraj. Oh Allah, heal the wounds of Hussain with the faraj of Imam Al-Mahdi. Oh Allah, heal the wounds of this society with the faraj of Imam Al-Mahdi. Oh Allah, we have sick, we have ailing, we have those in debt, we have those in need. Oh Allah, for the sake of Hussain and his child, for the sake of Bab al-Hawa'ij, grant us our hajat tonight. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. We perform dua faraj. إلهي عظم البلاء وبرح الخفا. Raise your hands to the heavens. وانكشف الغطاء وانقطع الرجاء وضاقت الأرض ومنعت السماء وأنت المستعان وإليك المشتكى وعليك المعول في الشدة والرخاء. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وللأمر الذين فرضت علينا طاعتهم وعرفتنا بذلك منزلتهم ففرج عنا بحقهم فرجا عاجلا قريبا كلمح البصر أو هو أقرب. Call upon Rasul and Amir. Ya Muhammad, Ya Ali, Ya Ali, Ya Muhammad, اكفي عني فإنكما كافيان وانصراني فإنكما ناصران. يا مولانا يا صاحب الزمان الغوث 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 أدركني 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 الساعة 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 العجل العجل العجل. يا أرحم الراحمين بحق محمد وآله الطاهرين. صلوات.